Welcome back to Thunderbirds Character Chronicles. In this episode, we're talking about Scott Tracy, pilot of Thunderbird 1.
Hello, folks.
Born on the 4th of April 2035, Scott is the eldest of the Tracy brothers. He was named after astronaut Malcolm Scott Carpenter and attended Yale University, where he studied aeronautics, mathematics and navigation before completing his formal education at Oxford University. Like his father Jeff before him, Scott then joined the US Air Force, where he was decorated many times for his bravery. It was serving in the Air Force that gave Scott a taste for piloting high-speed aircraft. After leaving the Air Force, Scott attended Tracy College in Kansas to complete his astronaut training. There he gained first-hand experience at the college's space training facility, and it wasn't long before Scott graduated as a fully qualified astronaut. After the tragedy in which his mother Lucille and his grandfather Grant were killed in a severe avalanche, Scott saw it his duty as the eldest son to keep a close eye on his father, who was suffering from a breakdown following the incident. When Jeff went missing, Scott immediately organised a search party as soon as they had a bearing on his father's location. Like his brothers, Scott was eager to be a part of Jeff's new international rescue team from the start. He, Jeff and Alan flew out to the Pacific to survey the island Jeff had envisioned as their base. Scott's experience in piloting the high-velocity experimental aircraft of the US Air Force made him the ideal choice to fly the world's most advanced hypersonic craft, Rescue 1 as it was known at the time. It was an incident during Scott's first test flight of the vehicle that inspired a name change for the rescue fleet. Scott was enjoying the flight when a heavy storm rolled in and he was instructed to return to base. However, it was too late as Rescue 1 was hit by lightning and went into a crash dive. Scott fought to regain control of the ship, and with the help from Brain's ground-to-air control system, he was able to make a safe emergency landing. Following this, Scott remarked to Jeff that after being struck by lightning, his craft became a real Thunderbird, prompting Jeff to rename the new fleet from Rescues to Thunderbirds. As the pilot of Thunderbird 1, Scott is always first on the scene of any Earth-based disasters to assess the danger zone and to determine if heavy rescue equipment is required. Fast-talking and quick-thinking, Scott has a gift for leadership and pressurized decision-making, traits which are especially important in his role as first responder. Of all the international rescue personnel, Scott's mission log is the most extensive. His first assignment was also International Rescue's first mission. The new passenger airliner, Fireflash, was unable to land due to a bomb being fixed to its undercarriage. Upon his arrival at London Airport, Scott quickly took charge of the situation and made it very clear to the airport team that after their own failed rescue attempt, international rescue was their only hope.
Look, there are 600 people up there with about 40 minutes to live. Now, you can't help them, but I believe we can.
Scott then set up his mobile control headquarters in the airport's control tower. From there, he coordinated the rescue and relayed key information to the Fireflash pilots and Virgil, who was driving the elevator cars. As well as his mobile control unit, Scott also uses Thunderbird 1's remote camera to survey the rescue area, helping the team to decide on the best course of action. Scott is always willing to risk his own life to save others. When he and Virgil came to the rescue of the Carter family, who were trapped beneath the ruins of Thompson Tower, Scott knew their only hope was to use Brain's experimental cutting gas. This was despite the fact that using it on tests had rendered them both unconscious. Fortunately, the risk paid off and the Carters were saved. In addition to piloting Thunderbird 1, Scott is also the co-pilot of Thunderbird 3, accompanying his youngest brother Alan on several space missions and to Thunderbird 5 when Alan and John exchanged duties each month. As a member of International Rescue, Scott is quite used to being exposed to dangerous situations. However, there was one occasion when he was caught off guard. Whilst overflying the Sahara Desert, Thunderbird 1 was ambushed by a fleet of mysterious fighter jets and subsequently shot down. Fortunately, Scott was found by a pair of archaeologists, Lindsay and Wilson, who treated his wounds and radioed Scott's family to let them know he was okay. Later on, Scott was able to return the favour to Lindsay and Wilson by coming to their rescue after they became lost in the desert with no water. The three of them ended up trapped in the lost pyramid of embodies which the explorers had been searching for. Scott was then involved in an intense gunfight with Lindsay, who had been driven to madness due to heat exhaustion. The gunfight would have proved fatal for Scott if not for the intervention of the pyramid's mysterious inhabitants, known as the Zombites. They captured Scott and the two explorers and took them along their monorail to a control room hidden beneath the pyramid, where Scott discovered the Zombites were responsible for shooting him down. It was thanks to Scott's fast thinking that he, Wilson and Lindsay made their escape, seconds before the pyramid exploded. Another aspect of Scott's role in the organisation is making sure strict secrecy is maintained throughout rescue operations and ensuring no photographs are taken.
Whatever happens, secrecy must be maintained at all costs.
He is aided by Thunderbird 1's automatic camera detector, which has proved a useful device on many occasions, such as when it alerted Scott that reporter Ned Cook and his cameraman Joe were videotaping his craft. Acting fast, Scott gave chase and was able to erase the footage.
I've electromagnetically wiped the videotape, Cook. The entire recording is blank.
Scott's capacity for clear thinking in extreme circumstances proved invaluable during the rescue of Eddie Hausman, who was trapped in an explosives tractor precariously balanced on the edge of a cliff. The downward force of Thunderbird 2's engines threatened to tip the vehicle over the edge. The situation appeared hopeless, but Scott had an idea. He manoeuvred Thunderbird 1 so that it was directly beneath Eddie's tractor. Next, Scott gradually guided his ship upwards until the nose cone made contact with the tractor. He was then able to hold the vehicle up while Virgil and Alan brought Thunderbird 2 in low again to pick it up. It was a delicate manoeuvre that could have easily cost Scott his life, but thanks to his expert piloting, the mission was a success. Although usually involved with rescues on land, in the air or in space, there was one incident which took Scott beneath the waves, when he and Gordon were rescuing an unconscious Brains who was trapped under the ruins of a temple on the bed of Lake Anasta. Scott deployed the hydrostatic hoist, an inflatable lifting kit, to hold up the stone column Brains was trapped under while Gordon pulled him clear. They made it just in time before the cable snapped. Despite his commanding presence and general seriousness, Scott does have a softer side and is quite the pushover with children. After the rescue of Tony and Bob Williams, Scott was more than happy to join in with their international rescue game, even if he did end up feeling rather silly.
The things I do for international rescue.
Then, while taking care of young stowaway Chip Morrison, Scott not only showed him round the cockpit of Thunderbird 1 and recalled the events of their first rescue, but did so without any encouragement from Chip, unlike his brothers. Scott's unfaltering bravery, as well as him being the first to arrive at the danger zone, means he is regularly put in harm's way, and nowhere was this more evident than when he came face to face with giant alligators.
Giant alligators?
In one of International Rescue's strangest assignments, Scott had to reach a group of people trapped in their house by the alligators surrounding the area. The creatures had grown to several times their normal size, after ingesting a growth drug which the scientists who lived there had been working on. Scott managed to make it into the house and evacuate the people from the basement laboratory before the ceiling came down, and was able to get them to safety once his brothers arrived in Thunderbird 2 and tranquilized the alligators. As oldest brother, Scott is second in command of International Rescue. and when Jeff was persuaded by Lady Penelope to take a vacation, he left Scott in charge. During Scott's spell in command, disaster struck at the Seascape drilling rig after an accident during World Navy maneuvers. A missile exploded on the seabed, causing a 200-foot jet of fire to flare up close to the rig. Scott, initially unsure of whether to get involved, eventually decided to send his brothers to the scene to extinguish the fire. When Jeff heard the news, he was furious with Scott.
You should never have got involved.
Well, listen, Father.
No, you listen, son. International rescue is not just a lot of machinery for putting out fires. It's a serious business.
However, a second disaster at Seascape saw rig workers Frank Hooper and Dick O'Shea trapped in a diving sphere as fire from the gas field engulfed the entire rig. Scott immediately realised they now had a real emergency on their hands and once again dispatched Alan, Virgil and Gordon to the disaster area. When Jeff arrived home this time, he was full of praise for the way Scott handled the situation. Away from his international rescue duties, Scott is relaxed and good-humoured. He can often be found taking it easy by the pool or playing snooker in the games room. In summary, Scott is an extremely determined individual, backed by his unfaltering bravery. He has good judgment and always looks out for his younger brothers. That brings us to the end of another episode of Thunderbirds Character Chronicles. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more exciting Gerry Anderson content, and we'll see you in the next video. FAB.